Hey gang, welcome to this volume of True Scary Stories. Just a couple of creepy school stories, as that's the season we're in where I live. All the kids are headed back to class. Hope you like these, and there's one in here that's not so terrifying in the sense of what we usually share, but it's scary in its own right. So sit back, relax, and no matter where you are around the round world, enjoy. Haunted School Elevator. Submitted by Patty T. Hi. I went to a university in the Midwest and dormed at a building that had 4 floors. Every other floor was guys or girls. I am a girl, by the way. There were stairwells at each corner of the building, but there was also an elevator that would and wouldn't work sometimes. This was taking place in the early 2000s, but it seemed like there were always maintenance guys working on the elevator, and one time some guys got stuck between floors. Some of us believed it was a mechanical issue, but others said it was the ghost of a man who died in the elevator after he got stuck during a summer break when he was working as a janitor. There was a team of people working to clean up all the damage from students the year before, and they would all go floor to floor working. This is true. His name was Tim, and at the end of one day, a Friday, the workers had all finished the building and were ready to move on to the next dorm on the following Monday. For some reason, Tim was the last one to leave and went to the basement to take care of something. No one really knows what. Well, when he got into the elevator, it went down but got stuck between the first floor and the basement. I have no idea what happened or why no one heard him or if he hit the fire button that's in most elevators, but he was stuck there for over a week before someone found him. He spent his last days stuck in a little elevator, probably screaming for help. So this happened about 20 years before I went to school there. Like I said, the elevator always acted weird and would run constantly on weekends when no one was pushing the buttons. We would have movie nights, and because it was just down the hallway, and because dorm policy was that we had to keep our doors open if boys were in our rooms and vice versa, we would hear the elevator going up and down over and over and over when no one was in it. One night my boyfriend Alex decided to try and put a stop to it by riding it over and over saying prayers. He did it for about a half hour, going up and down, praying. Then his roommate Barry said that they should say one more prayer and leave a Bible in the elevator and see what happened. They got a bunch of their buddies together and set up people on each floor to see what would happen as the elevator went up and down on its own. When it got to the second floor, the doors opened and there was the Bible. Same for the third and fourth floor and on the way back down. When it went to the basement and came back up to the first floor, the Bible was gone. It was in there in the basement, but when it came back up, gone. We are all very religious people, and no one was pulling any pranks. I know because I was one of the people in the basement when this happened, and that King James Bible was in the elevator when it came down there. We were freaked out and had a prayer vigil that night. I stopped caring about the elevator and moved to a different dorm building the next year. This might not sound scary to people, but we were very scared at the time. I have no explanation what happened there. I do think there is some kind of religious significance, and I do wonder what happened to that Bible. The Girls at My New School. Submitted by Angelica. My name is Angie, and this happened when I transferred schools when my parents divorced. And this is my school story for you. I was 13 and going into year 9, and my biggest burden outside of being upset about my mom and dad splitting was the fact that I was almost 6 feet tall and 11 stone. I was a gangly thing, but very good at sport, but that's not the first impression you give when you start a new year, right? I loved football and was excited to see if I could make the school's club, but I was so scared because I didn't know anyone, and my bruv was going to a different school, so I was all alone. Things started and most bits were the same as what I was used to, and I quickly realized my size was getting me a lot of attention, especially from the lads, which had never happened to me before. Most of them were also athletic, but I soon found out were really lads in the truest sense. Athletic, smart, but rabble-rousers and drinkers and smokers, and that kind of excited me. They were all really nice to me, and there was one I really liked. His name was Richard. He was gorgeous and found me at all hours of the day, and I looked forward to seeing him every chance I could. Straight away we exchanged numbers and began texting. His best friend James was also nice to me, and we had this hilarious group chat that we checked out often even though we weren't supposed to have our phones out during class. Richard had been seeing this girl but told me it wasn't serious, and he fancied me more than her anyway. I was still nervous about that. James had a girlfriend who was one of the only people who didn't like me, and she made it known that that was so. She was friends with Richard's Ava, and I guess that's why she didn't like me. But she went around saying the only reason Richard liked me was because of my baps and that I was stuck up. It hurt my feelings, but James said she was just being bitchy and that's how she was. She didn't mean anything personal about it. Yeah, right. Around Halloween, Richard asked me to go to a Halloween party with him after his rugby union tilt, and I was so happy to accept. He asked what we should go as because he wanted to do it as a couple. I was so excited, and I felt like we were going to get together seriously. I said we should go as Batman and Catwoman, and he thought that was a terrific idea. This was back around 1997, just so you know. We shopped for costumes and got more excited as the party neared. A bunch of Richard's friends were going as Droogs from A Clockwork Orange, and we all had so many laughs about them wearing makeup, and me and their girls showed them how that we would put eyeliner on them and then whip up their eyelashes. Everybody thought it was hilarious, but not Ava and James's Hannah. They both complained and bitched about everything we were laughing about, to the point that James walked away with Hannah to talk to her about it. The party got closer, and Richard told me that he would come and get me, and we would walk to the party together. I got dressed up, and my mom took pictures of us when he came. She told us to be careful, and she really liked him too, so I felt very comfortable going to this party. We were okay to walk because the party was at a girl named Olivia's house, and it wasn't too far away from mine. Richard promised to take care of me, and we went off. On the way, Richard took out a flask of vodka his bruv had bought him. He asked if I wanted some, and I giggled and told him I'd never had any of that before. He took a sip and said no pressure, but I wanted to, and I did. Whoosh! It was like fire, and I coughed. Richard laughed and said that was too big of a pull and to take it easy next time. We got to the party, and straight away I knew something was wrong. Ava was dressed as Poison Ivy from the Batman movie, and I got nervous, like she was trying to make a point about something. Richard saw this and told me not to worry, and took me around to say hi to everyone. The Droogs showed up, and I got wrestled in with the girls who had to fix up their makeup, and Olivia's mom was in stitches laughing as we went to work. I was having a great time until I looked up and saw Ava arguing with Richard. She was waving her arms around and pointing in his face, and he walked away from her and came over to me. I asked if everything was okay, and he said yes. I needed to answer the call of nature, and he walked me to the bathroom. I went inside and looked in the mirror and almost died. In lipstick on the mirror were the words, "Angie is a slut." I froze and got sick to my stomach. After a minute, Richard knocked on the door, and I snapped out of it, took care of things, and went back out. I showed him the mirror, and he got mad and started trying to wipe it off. When we got back to the party, Ava and some girls were staring at us laughing. Richard held my hand and pulled me to another room and gave me another sip of the vodka. I took more than I needed to again because I was scared and sad that they had done that to me. The music was loud and everyone in the other room was dancing and talking, but Richard turned me to him and asked me to be his girl, and before I knew it, we were snogging in the middle of this dining room. I told him yes after a bit, and we had another sip of the vodka. As I mentioned, I'm a big girl, but even this little bit of alcohol was making me buzzy because I never really drank. We went and danced and had some food, and I decided I needed some water. Hannah came over and told us how she liked our costumes. I told her I liked her Red Riding Hood costume. I thought it was weird that she was being nice, but I also didn't care. Richard and I were a thing. I went to get my water, but it was gone, so Hannah offered to get another one for me, and we all kept dancing and hanging out. I was having a riot. Suddenly, I didn't feel so good. I was getting queasy and didn't want to stand up anymore. Richard asked if I was okay and led me over to a sofa to sit down. Everything was getting blurry, and that's the last I remembered of anything until much, much later. I woke up in hospital with my mum and bruv sitting next to me, and Richard and his mum on the other side of the room. I was so sick and could barely keep down water, and there was an IV in my arm. Everyone seemed happy that I woke up, but I felt horrendous. Richard wasn't wearing his Batman costume anymore, and I remember thinking crazily that he still looked so buff and that I looked like hell in a hospital gown and my knickers. He admitted to my mum and his that we had had some swigs of vodka, but it turned out that Ava and Hannah put gamma hydroxybutyrate in the water they gave me and were going to do the same to Richard to get us in trouble. Both mums were very mad that we had been drinking, but were happy that we were okay, especially me. Ava and Hannah got into a lot of trouble, and I didn't see much of them after the next couple of months of the year. They went away for quite a bit. Their plan to humiliate me backfired on them, and all of their friends turned on them, and they were on the outs anywhere they went. I didn't know it at the time, but I was dangerously close to going into a coma. They put so much junk in my water. Richard and I stayed together for 4 more years after this, boffing on and off, but he's now married and has kids of his own, and once in a while we bump into one another and laugh about how we got together. He was such a great lad to me and welcomed me and protected me from some really bad girls. Sorry if this isn't scary enough for your stories, but I think it's pretty scary. Ava and Hannah, if you can hear this, you can both fuck off. I grew up in a scary schoolhouse by M. Wilson 1212. Just to clarify, when we bought this house in the Scottish countryside, it was well known in the area as being the residence of the old headmaster who worked at the school next door about 100 years or so ago. When my parents bought it, they were casually told there was a strange presence in the place, but they brushed it off, as most would. The house itself was in good condition, but very old. Things started off okay. As a child of about 8 or 9, I would hear a bump in the night and get a little scared, but that was pretty normal, and I could kind of get used to it. One night in particular, the heater in my room was broken, so my parents made me sleep in the spare bedroom at the back of the house. I was okay with this, mainly because it meant I got to use the double bed. But for some strange reason, I never felt comfortable in that room. I was always awoken by strange noises of bumping and squeaking. One night I was laying in bed, nearly asleep, when I felt someone's finger run across the ends of my toes. I sighed because obviously it was my brother who wanted to annoy me, so I just ignored it. A few seconds later, it happened again, so instead of ignoring it, I just said, "Can you seriously piss off?" Then I went to sleep. I told my mom in the morning, and she said she would stop my brother from annoying me again. And a few years later, when we had moved out of the house, my mom brought that night up, saying that she didn't tell me the truth because I would have never slept again. But my brother was in fact on a sleepover that night, and my parents never went into my room. She spent a long time trying to work out what it was, but couldn't think of any rational explanation. This story is reinforced by the fact that my granny visited from England and stayed in that exact same room, the guest bedroom in the back. She told my mom throughout her stay that she had to occasionally get up from bed to turn the bathroom tap off. The worst part was she distinctly remembers having a conversation one night with a man who called himself Sandy, who is believed to have been the old landlord of the house. I personally didn't look into the house's history because I didn't want to believe any of this was real. The final event is one that still chills me to the bone as a 20-year-old man. Since the house was very old, we didn't have curtains. Instead, all the windows were fitted with shutters. Mine had a slight gap in the middle, so the streetlight outside would beam in through the middle of a thick vertical line. One night I was laying in bed, not being able to sleep due to the heat of my room. I had a thick duvet and a radiator going. I was simply staring at the light coming from the window, and I could see something fucking haunting. I saw a very, very thin dark figure run from one side of the room to the other. I'm getting chills even typing this. I was literally frozen with fear. I couldn't move an inch. I forced my eyes shut and plugged my ears, and I just lay there in horror and tried to sleep. This is not the last time I saw the figure, though. I saw it again about 4 or 5 months later. The only difference was it ran silently across the room, but then back the same direction a few seconds later. I was getting myself ready to scream when I heard my dad's voice in the corridor. I quickly called him into my room, and when he turned on the light, there was nothing there. I haven't told anybody about this story for at least 5 or 6 years. Crazy Teacher Relationship, or Not As Cool As You Think, submitted by Stay Gold Ponyboy. My name is not Ponyboy, but that's what I'm going with here, as this story is kind of fucked up, and the last thing I need is to be identified. I'm sending you this because of all the people out there who think it would be super cool to have a relationship with a hot female teacher. It's not what it's cracked up to be, I assure you. So, when I was a senior in high school, I took a computer class being taught by a woman who worked as an IT person and taught a few classes too. She was young, super hot, and always dressed borderline inappropriate. If it matters, this was a town in Florida, but I'm not saying where. I had a girlfriend a year younger than me, and I'm not going to be proud about this because I did cheat on her. Anyway, let's call girlfriend Anne and teacher Susan. Why? I pulled those names out of my ass. The computer class was pretty easy, and it was more about using programs and not programming, which I thought it was going to be. This is when PowerPoint first came out, so someone decided that there should be a course about using Microsoft stuff. After I knew Susan was going to be teaching it, I stayed. Call me a perv, but she was only 21 and I was 18. I knew something was up just in the way that we talked about my projects in class, and the way she looked at me. I was just a kid and happy with my girlfriend, but I was also a kid and falling for this older woman. One day she asked me to stay after school to help her with something, and I told her I could, but I had to leave after a while because I had practice. I played basketball and ran track. So I went to her class at the end of the day, and she was sitting at her desk computer and asked me to check out this new thing she did with PowerPoint. I can't remember exactly what it was, but maybe something about embedding a video, which was a big deal at the time. She got up, I sat in her chair, and she leaned over me, and her boobs were literally on my neck. I got the hint, and this story isn't about what we did, but we did. It's what happened afterwards that things got really scary. I was stupid and started a sexual relationship with her behind Anne's back. Susan bought me all kinds of cool things and clothes, and I would secretly meet her at the mall or at the movies or wherever. I did notice, though, that she was constantly watching me at school and would get pissed off if I was ever near Anne. Susan showed up at my basketball games and later track meets and wanted to talk to me after them, but Anne was usually there because she was a cheerleader and ran track too. I started noticing her around the fringes a lot more, and I even saw Susan in the parking lot of my church one Sunday morning looking for me. I'm not going to lie, I loved the sex with her. She was a bit more advanced than Anne, and I know it makes me a creep to say that. It's been like 25 years, and I know it's easy to say I was just a kid, but it's true, I was. We had a senior trip to Austin, Texas for some music festival, and Susan went as a chaperone. I remember getting on the bus after saying goodbye to my parents and Anne giving Susan a death look, and I wondered if she knew what was going on. Anyway, we got to Austin, and on the second night there was a soft tap on my door. My roommate and friend Mike was asleep, so I got up, and it was Susan, who quickly smuggled me into her room. She wanted sex, so I obliged. But she brought the condoms, and after the second time, a condom broke. I thought this was odd because it had never happened before. I didn't say anything, but grabbed the box and went back to my room, not getting caught by another chaperone. I went into the bathroom and pulled out the condoms and saw that they had all been pierced by something, but not so big as they would break when I put them on. I was angry and scared. What the hell was Susan trying to do? We got back home from the trip, and one night I had to go to the library to work on a final project. Susan had followed me there, and I told her I needed to talk to her. We sat in her car, and I brought up the condom thing and said that I wasn't going to get her pregnant, and she got really mad that I accused her of that. I snapped and told her it was over and that she needed to leave me alone. I got out of her car and she screamed, and I mean screamed, "This is only over when I say it's over, pony boy." I slammed the door and went back into the library. Sorry so much of this is backstory, but I think it's important to know where I was and what happened up to this point, because this is when the crazy shit started to happen. I started getting these typed notes in my locker that were threatening to expose me to my girlfriend Anne, and of course I knew where they were coming from. One told me that if I took Anne to the prom, we'd both be sorry, and that one was true. I didn't have money for a limo, so I took Ann to the prom with my uncle's Cadillac convertible. 2 other friends, Tom and Nikki, let's call them, went with us. Prom was fun. I was honestly getting ready to tell Ann what I had done in a few days, but on our way to an after-prom party, this car started following us real close. After a bunch of turns and the car still following, I sped up, but the car did too and then zoomed by us. And that's when I saw it was Susan's car. I'm not kidding. She threw a milkshake out of her moonroof and it splattered all over the caddy and got on all of us. I slowed down and she took off. The girls all screamed and I knew this was all my fault and I played dumb. We got cleaned up and went to the party at our friend's house, and after we changed into swimsuits and calmed down, we told everyone at the party what had happened. While we were having a good time and swimming and just hanging out, our friend's mother asked who the woman standing at the hedge was. We all looked, but there was no one there. But I knew who it was. Ann shot me a look. Man, she must have known and was maybe waiting for me to do the right thing. But I got out of the pool and ran over to the hedge with Tom right behind me. There was Susan, crouching behind a tree. I told Tom I would handle it, and I later told him everything and he kept it quiet. I walked over to her telling her that she needed to leave and that I wouldn't say anything about the milkshake. She literally grabbed my crotch and told me, "Ponyboy, if you don't meet me tomorrow, I'll cut it off." At this point, I was getting scared. I knew I fucked up, but this was too much. I told her I would meet her, and she said to meet at the library parking lot. I went back to the party and told everyone it was just some drunk lady and she had wandered away. Later, I took Ann home and wanted to tell her, but again, I chickened out. She asked if we were going to another party the next day, and I told her I would pick her up, and yes, we were going. When I got home, my parents were asleep, and I just went to my room. My phone, I had my own line. My sister got a TV and a Nintendo. I got a phone. My phone rang. Who else would it be? Susan started babbling about how she was coming over and that nothing was over and that she would tell everyone I raped her if I didn't go along. I told her I would meet her the next day and hung up. She called back and I finally turned off the ringer, but she just kept calling and leaving these crazy messages on my machine that I kept because they were threatening me to the point where the last one said she was going to kill both of us. About 4 a.m, I heard a tap at my bedroom window and opened the blinds. There was Susan, standing naked in my yard. "I want to come in, Ponyboy," she said flatly. I should have called the cops. I should have told my parents. I should have done something, but all I did was close the blinds and got back into bed. She left after tapping the window again, saying, "I love you, Ponyboy." That morning I called Tom and asked him to go with me, but hide in the library parking lot with a camera and take pictures of me. I don't know why, it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I told my parents some bullshit about where I had to go real quick, and Tom met me up the street. I drove to the library and let Tom out a block or so away so he could hide in the parking lot. When I got there, the lot was empty except for Susan's car. I walked over to it and she said to get in. I did, but kept the door open and had one leg outside. She started the car up, but I started to get out and told her we weren't going anywhere, and that I was going to my dad and the cops if she didn't leave me alone. She screamed that she was going to fail me in class and that I wouldn't be able to graduate on time and go to college, and that she would tell Ann about us. I told her I already told Ann, which was a total lie, and that it was done and she needed to grow up. She slapped me, burst into tears, and then tried to hug me. I got out of the car and she was just crying and crying as I went to my car. I had to take it back to my uncle. I left her there and picked up Tom and we got out of Dodge. I immediately went to Ann's house and told her everything, and that I ruined everything and that I was a terrible human being. Of course she was pissed off, but she said she thought something was going on. She cried and punched me and called me lots of names, which I deserved. Ann told me that I had to tell my dad what happened, and she was going with me to make sure that I did. I guess that was her way of getting back at me, as my parents were super religious and forbade me from having sex or anything like that. I drove home, let Tom out at his house, and when I got to my place, whose car was in the driveway? Susan's. She was standing at the door of my house getting ready to ring the doorbell when Ann screamed out at her. Susan ran at us and tried to tackle me to the ground as Ann kept screaming at her to leave me alone. My parents came out and so did the neighbors as Susan kept going on and on with all this crazy bullshit. My mom called the cops, and they showed up and detained Susan, and now I had to tell everyone about my stupidity. Susan was still going crazy, and the police actually had to do that thing where they tie your feet to your hands when they put her in the car. Long story longer, my parents were devastated. Anne broke up with me, although we're still friends now, but I didn't press charges against Susan because deep down I knew she was messed up and didn't want her to lose her job. My dad agreed, but my mom didn't. She didn't talk to me for months until I left for college, and even then it was all about how I let her down and needed to get back to the Bible. She even cussed Anne out about our relationship. Anyway, that happened a long time ago, and the only reason I'm thinking of it now is because I found this channel and heard you ask for school stories. The other reason is because I got a friend request from Susan about 2 years ago on Facebook. She sent a message that said, "We did have fun though, didn't we?" Needless to say, I blocked her. My High School Horror Story by Exasperus. I was homeschooled through the 7th grade. Nothing super religious, though my mom was a Christian. Me and my siblings were schooled at home because Mom had a master's in education, and that was a good time. We learned well, had a good deal of one-on-one time with our teacher, and lots of time to be alone or outdoors or just doing whatever we wanted so long as we weren't watching TV. I remember those years quite fondly. In the 8th grade, not technically high school, but I'm going with it, I was sent to an all-boys private school. It was the sort of place where you had to wear a tie every day. There was a cricket club across the street, and like Dead Poets Society without Robin Williams, that's the way it was. Anyway, on my first day of school, I was sent through orientation, which included an audition of sorts with the choir director. The school was very small, and with such a small pool of applicants, the choir director was given free rein to choose whomever he wanted for boy choir, a group of about 60 2nd through 8th grade students who sang ghastly chamber music and Christmas carols. As my mother was a Christian, I had sung in a number of church choirs and had a good deal of vocal training. Needless to say, the choir director loved me, and he told me I had the voice of an angel. He accepted me into the choir on the spot. I was flattered, but soon realized that I was somewhat unique for more than my talent. My voice had yet to change. Now, remember, I was homeschooled, so I had almost no one against whom to gauge my development. I was the only 8th grader in my school who was an alto. This was more than a bit embarrassing for a boy trying to fit in an alien place. Regardless, I soldiered on through the 8th grade until sometime around Christmas break, when the choir was in full swing with the 7,000 Days of Christmas and Deck the Halls, when it was announced that for the boy choir play, we would be putting on The Wizard of Oz. It only took a few minutes for me to understand what was about to happen to me. The entire grade knew the cast before it was announced. 4 months into my first year of real school ever, I was informed I would be playing the role of Dorothy, ruby slippers and all. And play Dorothy I did. Ruby slippers, pigtails, necessary homosexual implications, and a 3rd grader dressed as Toto and all. In front of the entire school. You don't know embarrassment until you sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow to a crowded auditorium of all-male squash players. It was an unusual way to enter a new community. Of course, there are many, many more of these stories, mostly involving my complete lack of social skills at the time, but this one probably had the most resonant impact. Thanks for listening, gang. I hope you liked this edition. More to come shortly, and some pretty solid stuff that's wicked creepy. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this channel. And real quick, just a note to anyone who has hit me up with a request about a video not being used, or still images suck, or you need more sound effects, and so on. I got it, okay? I'm working on accommodating everyone, but I do have a day job, and I can't meet everyone's needs. Having said that, check out my Patreon page and follow me on social media. All the links are in the description below. Take care wherever you may be, and remember, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.